Good morning. You're watching Recreational Knitting, and my name is Karen. To anyone new to the podcast, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. I appreciate everyone. And to everybody that stuck with me through the older times, I really appreciate you coming back and watching again. Thank you so much. We have recently pulled into Edisto Beach, South Carolina. It is gorgeous here. We are very, very close to the ocean. We did make it out the first day we were here. I think I got a little sun on my face. Okay, I need that vitamin D. And did a little walk up and down the beach, and the water was warm. It was wonderful. So, last week I came to you from North Carolina, where we had stayed for about 4 months getting some medical work done, and we're glad to be back on the road. Behind me is what is called here the Low Country. These are estuaries that come in from the ocean, and they travel. They're little rivers and creeks, and they are not totally saline, not totally freshwater. So this is at high tide, or it was a bit ago. I think it might be headed towards low tide at this point. But this is what the geography of the Low Country is all about. It's beautiful here, very friendly, very quiet. We are very much enjoying it after being in Charlotte in what essentially was a parking lot. So this is what I usually come to you from. Those of you that are new, welcome. Please do all the YouTube-y things if you think that this is something that you might enjoy. And thanks to all of you who have been following me for a while. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. It really means a lot to me. I think we are developing a nice community here, and I just appreciate you. I look forward to talking to you every week, and I'm missing my in-person knit nights and people who share the same interests with me. So this is the next best thing. I'm hoping that's what you're getting from this as well. Let's get on to some knitting. No finished objects. I don't think I'll ever have this thing finished. Are you as tired of seeing this as I am? This is my habitation throw, and I'll put the yarn down there. And this little donut is where I was last week. So I haven't done a whole lot with it, it seems like this week. Although I feel like I have knit and knit and knit and knit and knit on this. So I'm gonna show new people. The pineapple is where the decreasing started. Yeah, that's a lot of knitting. Haven't weighed it. I don't know what it weighs. I don't think I can get it on my scale. It's a lot of scraps. I'm using it totally out of scraps and a couple minis that I have that are fingering weight, and there's a few sport weight in there as well, but mostly fingering weight. So it's a lot of knitting. Yeah, I'm getting really tired of this. This may get put on the back burner, but I really want to finish it. I started it December 1st as my Advent, and I made it probably twice as large as Helen Stewart, the designer, made hers, because I had heard that it's really not very useful as a throw. So I wanted it to be, curl up in the lazy boy and watch TV kind of throw. So I'm making mine bigger. Now I'm regretting that. I'd been done long ago. But Yes, my habitation throw, still in the needles. I did work, you know how I said I was going to work on my Yum sweater by Isabel Kramer and my habitation throw and try to get some real progress done on that. That didn't work. I had forgotten about this pretty much. This is, yeah, this is the back. This is my Trisceo sweater. And I'm down to my last ball after I finish this little tiny bit. I've got that much of one sleeve done and ran out of yarn and started on this one. And now I'm running out of yarn. So, hoping to get that finished soon, very soon. It's made out of BioBalance BC Garn, which is 55% wool and 45% cotton, or the other way around. So professional. I know all the contents of all the wools that I'm working with. Yeah, I have no idea. I think the last time I showed this, I was right here on the sleeve. So I made a little tiny bit of progress. It's not something that, it was buried in the bottom of my bag, basically, is what happened. So, yeah. But I'm going to show you what I got into rather than do that. I made a sock. Now, it doesn't have a heel yet. It'll be an afterthought heel. But this is made with knit spin yarn. It's sport weight, and it's Targhee Sport, which is 90% Targhee and 10% nylon. And I briefly cast on all the stitches and knit my first row. I don't know what you guys do, but this is what I have learned over the years of making socks. The first row, instead of immediately going into my circle, I do a row of knit. And I'm not sure you can really see any difference. But it helps not to twist your stitches. But it also, I think, gives a cleaner finish. I know some people have talked about, I think Aquila on a Lefty Knitter podcast said that somebody had told her to do that for 2 rows. I've only done it for 1. I don't think I've ever tried it for 2, but maybe I will. So I'm waiting on measurements from my daughter or son-in-law or somebody so that I can cut in a heel and get that going. But this was a part of her sock club last year. I happened to get in on it, I guess, before the end of the year. And this is her little known holiday collection. And some of the ones for this particular colorway were Ice Cream for Breakfast Day and Cat Herder Day. Yeah, I didn't know about those either, but ice cream for breakfast, I could probably do that. It was hot enough. And I'm keeping that in my wonderful bag for my wonderful friend, Mandy of Mouse Makes. Today is a perfect day to smile. It certainly is. Sun, beach, what's not to love? So that's really all the knitting that I had to show you. I've done some other work on some other projects, but really it's not been a great few days for knitting. We have been at the beach, and we have been on our bikes. We rode the island yesterday, stopped and had some lunch. It was chilly here yesterday, chillier yesterday than today. Today is supposed to get cloudy, and tomorrow on our day to Charleston, we're moving to Charleston tomorrow, and we will be running into thunderstorms, I guess, from all the stuff that's going on in the weather. So, yeah, there's that. So, maybe I'll get some knitting on my habitation throw tomorrow on the way to Charleston. So, wanted to talk to you today about why knitting. Something that I've thought about for several years now. Why knitting? What draws us to knitting? I've put a couple historical articles down below. You're welcome to read them or not. It's obviously originally started to clothe people, to make socks, to make warm socks, and to make warm items for people to wear. But why is it that we knit? I've gone through crafts my whole life. Those of you who are new, I started knitting when I was 8, when I begged my grandmother for a kit at the local Woolworths. And it was a kit with 100% wool. And it was a Susan Bates kit. And it was for a hat, which was really a beanie, not a beanie, but a tam, and mittens and a scarf, and all were cabled. I managed to make all of them. I still have the needles. They're bright green with white Susan Bates number 8 on the top. And that's when I started my knitting adventure. Nobody in my family knit. My grandmother crocheted and made mostly granny square Afghans. Later in her life, she made Afghans for nursing home patients. And from there, I knit those things. I knit them. I wore them to school. Looking at the mittens, which were, knit in pieces and then seamed, my seams were not good. But both my daughters actually wore those mittens. The scarf has gone missing, and I haven't seen the hat in ages. So those are long gone. But that tells you that knitting endures and wool endures. From that, I did some linen towels that were like, we called them tea towels. They're dish towels, but they're made to put on the front of your stove. Everyone has them. And I started that embroidery when I was about 10. And I still have that towel, and it has knots in it. Yeah, on the back there are knots, and I used embroidery thread, 6 pieces at a time, the way it comes. I did not know any better. No one was there to teach me. I'm self-taught in pretty much everything I've done. And after I saw that, I go, well, there must be a better way to do this. And I had a neighbor who knitted and did embroidery, and she did a lot of things, but she told me how to weave in the ends of embroidery floss and not to use 6-piece, the whole wad. And so I made my next towel, which I don't have any longer. I don't know what happened to that, but that's how I got started into crafting. I think my next pieces were Women's Day magazine had a doll a month based on the novel Little Women. And I made 3 of those dolls, and I'd started the 4th and just had never finished. I don't know whatever happened to those. They were stuffed, they sat on my bed, and it took me a couple of years by hand sewing. My mother was not a crafter at all. My grandmother was, but really wasn't a person who sews. So I did these all by myself in my room, and would occasionally grab my grandmother and say, let's go up to Woolworths and buy some fabric for a dress for my Amy, which is actually one of my children's names because of Little Women. Yes, yeah, I'm that person. So from there, I got into counted cross stitch, stamped cross stitch. And from there, counted cross stitch. Excuse me, something flew into my mouth. Knitting took a back burner because it's not like today where you can walk in and there are patterns, and on Ravelry there are patterns free on the internet. It was for probably a 12-year-old by then. It was a little more difficult. And I didn't have anybody to teach me except for my neighbor. But, it was a little harder for me to do that. And then I entered my teenage years where I crafted, and I don't know whether you guys had the GIMP. It's plastic lace that you lace things and made like keychains and, necklaces and lanyard, where you put your ID on, and all of that. We had that in our high school store, and I made everything green and gold for my high school. So bracelets, you name it, I did it. So going into college, I really had very little crafting that I was settled on. But realized very soon that I needed to do something. I went through a stage. One of my boyfriends in college, his mother did latch hooks, so she bought me a latch hook kit for my birthday, and I did that. I don't know what has happened to that, and later on in life, I did actual rug hooking with the long pieces of wool, and it's more like a punch needle kind of thing, but with wool strips. I've messed around with sewing. I've tried to crochet. My grandmother taught me to crochet, but it hurt my hand. I really need to try again. So for years and years, I did cross stitch, which really evolved into making samplers and reproduction samplers, Quaker samplers. I had at that point 1850. Where did 1980 come from? 1850s farmhouse in northern Maryland, and you don't put Chinese furniture in that. You kind of put old looking stuff, antiques, folk art, that kind of thing. And that's what I did. I filled it with samplers, historic samplers, penny rugs, hooked rugs, most of which have, due to downsizing over the years, have gone somewhere, hopefully to a good home. I've kept most of my frame samplers and stopped doing that because of a severe case of pink eye that we won't discuss. But then I got into knitting when I had the pink eye and haven't looked back. So why do I knit? Well, for me it was kind of, I need to be creative. I need to be creative. I need to be doing something with my hands. And cross stitch was out because I could no longer see. So I sold my stands, my lights, most of my patterns, all of my linens, most of my silk, floss, and moved on. I have one more in here that I need to finish. And every time I pull it out, I go, oh, I don't think I can do this. But I am. I'm going to finish that. So mine has come to be knitting because I need to do a craft. And I needed to keep my hands busy. And I have improved my skills since that day in 2008 when I picked knitting back up. And, you know, I've made lots of sweaters. I am still a mediocre knitter, and I'm okay with that. I'd like to be an expert knitter, but it's not going to happen. And that's okay. I'm all right with that. It brings me joy. It brings me peace internally, and especially when I'm knitting in nature like this, I get lost in thoughts, and most of them are good. So I want you to put down below, what other crafts have you embraced, have you loved, and then left for whatever reason? Are you still passionate about other crafts as well as knitting? And what is it that you would love to learn? I'm very curious to know how we evolve as knitters. Have you always been a knitter and that's all you've done? Just leave a comment below. I love the interaction. And those of you that leave comments, I invite all of you to react to those comments. This isn't just about me talking to you. This is about us. So I invite you to do so. Just so you know, I'll be showing you some pictures of our trip down to the Low Country in South Carolina. But first, I'm just going to put a couple pictures of Universal Yarn. I did a little mini field trip over there. They have no store. It's just a warehouse, but it's in Harrisburg, North Carolina. I had to mail a package, and that post office was 1 mile. Harrisburg, North Carolina was 1 mile longer than going to the more local post office. So I decided I'm going to go over and I'm going to take a picture at Universal Yarn. And I did. And I went in and I said, hello, is there any way that I can look into the warehouse? And of course, the answer was no. They said they had an emergency. Whatever. I took some pictures of the waiting area and left. But it's just fun to see where the objects that we love come from. And I went around to the back and watched them pack a big FedEx truck going somewhere. And maybe some of that went into your home. I hope so. So I will see you next time from someplace on the road. Thank goodness. Glad to be back on the road. Glad to have some sun. And you will see in this clip that I'm going to put on part of our travels and how we got here. And if it's not too long, I will show you some of the local homes and how quiet it is here. Bye for now. See you next time. Knit in peace.